finish before, like I said,
One other comment. I read in this rule that you can market, and you tell me if I'm wrong. You can market the listing inside your own office, but, and you don't have to follow this rule. So that works for Berkshire.
so that is part of the office exclusive. And if there's a complaint about this policy, it's the office exclusive side of it. So that's what's bubbled up in some of the national.
How many agents does Berkshire have?
Not gonna get into that. Not gonna get into that. So basically, let me talk about the process. If you put it into active after 1 day, no worries, nothing really changes from the way that it works right now. If you put it in hold, do not show, your property description will be appended with no showings until the date that you give us that the property will be available for showing.
So you guys put that in there, we don't put that in
You do not put that in there. We put it in there, and when you take it out of the hold, do not show, that gets stripped out of there. So all of the IDX websites, all of the public portals, the people that get syndicated information, will get that syndicated to them, that no showings until such and such date. The other piece of controversy that I need to get feedback from you guys is the way that the policy sits right now. If you put it in hold, do not show, you're telling the rest of the community that they cannot show it. That includes you. Okay? So that's part of this policy that we're looking to get our arms around. Okay? Yes, sir.
So what are we supposed to do? We get a listing contract signed, we know there's gonna be 10 days of clean and fresh express, carpet, paint, blinds, this kind of crap. And then, what do we do to keep people from going and knocking on the door and bothering the tenant or bothering the owner?
So if you don't market it,
I don't want more days on market either.
so you don't market it, then that's all you have to do. You have to register it with us, and as long as you're not marketing it, you can take as long as you want underneath the current proposal. So no signage, no social media, no marketing, as was defined in the policy. As long as you do that, you're fine.
And days on market starts.
Days on market, if you look at it, no DOM. On the left-hand side, no DOM. Okay? If you put it into hold, do not show, it is being marketed at that point. It's going out to all the syndicated sites. It's going out via IDX. It's going out to your website. It's most likely got a sign on it. There's marketing going on there. Days on market will count.
So we're gonna register it right away, and it's not gonna syndicate to anyone, no one knows it.
It actually doesn't even get displayed out to the rest of the community. Okay? It is just a registration process to let the MLS and the association know that the listing exists. It does not get published anywhere. NER's come back and said that on situations like that where the seller has signed something saying they're instructed not to market it, the MLS cannot publish those lists to the community as a whole. Okay? So you put it into a registration status, and as long as you're not marketing, no days on market, and you're good to go as long as you need to stage the property and do all those things.
Is that part available now, that registration page somewhere?
No, because this policy won't, as I said earlier, most likely is not gonna take, until May 1st. That is when we're required to do it, and I'm gonna push the board of directors as much as I possibly can to give us as much time to communicate this as possible. Okay? So the question was, if it's on office exclusive, can it be shown? The answer is yes. Only to people within your own brokerage and only to people who are clients. You guys remember what the definition of client was? Okay? Okay? I think, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we're gonna go ahead and open it up to questions because probably there's way too many people raising their hands at this point.
So you guys will need a mic to do
Please,
the question.
before you guys throw your questions out there, they are taping this for later. So please wait till the microphone comes to you.
So wait till you have the mic to
So
talk.
I'm not answering these unheard questions. So we'll
Okay, let's see.
Oh, wait,
No, right here.
Just really quickly, he's got the microphone, so he gets to go first.
Two things, if it's a co-list, so can both agents talk about it in their own firms? And the second question is, are any properties exempt? Commercial, industrial, is anything exempt?
The exempt question hasn't been answered as of yet, and in the co-list situation, yes, you can market it to your clients within both of those brokerages.
Okay, question. After you have the listing signed and you register it, who actually has that information? And are we guaranteed that information is not going to get out into the hands of buyers or buyer leads or some backdoor that will be affected as a result of this?
It will not be syndicated, it will not be sent out to any of the IDX websites. It will be a separate standalone database that even other brokers and agents cannot search within the multiple listing service. It is private, and the information will not go anywhere. It will not be searchable. Oh, withdrawn, oh, absolutely, withdrawn will, nothing changes to the statuses that are, the question was, is withdrawn gonna be searchable? And the answer is yes. Everything that you can do now within the statuses that of listings that are in the MLS remains the same. Whether or not the rules are a little bit different. Let's, if we can, go to, I know there was,
Has anyone considered that coming soon option?
so,
Is that
coming
possible?
coming soon was discussed within the CRMLS system. And in as much as we know that this is kind of a change, utilizing the term coming soon, hold, do not show is kind of coming soon. We didn't want to use the term coming soon because there's connotations of coming soon that the policy cannot do. Because the way that coming soon works right now is not what the policy is going to force on people. So adding a status in that said coming soon, we felt that the communication process would be a lot more difficult in changing opinions and behavior about the way coming soon should operate, instead of just operating off of a new status that we define for people and a process that we define for people. Recognize that everything on the left-hand side is per policy from NAR. This mandatory submission or this mandatory registration of office exclusives all comes out of the policy. Yes?
Can you touch upon the withdrawn status a little bit more and, what qualifies for that? Let's say I have a listing right now, it's under construction, it's gonna take some time, or let's just say I have a listing coming out in 2 weeks. Can you touch on the withdrawn a little bit more?
You can utilize that for the withdrawn status. So basically anything that naturally would have been held in hold in an off-market status can be held and withdrawn going forward. And there will be FAQs once all of this stuff gets approved by the board of directors. Yes, sir.
You touched on this and I didn't quite hear everything, so it may be a little redundant. In office is synonymous with brokerage, correct?
Correct.
So office, it really should be.
So it should be firm.
Okay.
They call it an office exclusive, it really should be firm exclusive.
So that
Whether or not, in what way that you define that, so.
So, just for clarity, I take a listing, I can share it with anyone in my office. They can share it with anyone whom they have a buyer-broker agreement. Is anyone, and this is where you're kind of policing the internet, which is a very dangerous route to go, but we'll see how that turns out. And you talked with, I think I heard, the seller says, hey, I want to put it on social media, I got my house coming soon. Does that come back to me?
Yes, and that's the definition that NAR has given us. I don't know, I'll tell you guys, I don't know that I agree with all aspects of this. I'm telling you that this is our best opportunity and best way of answering to the policy that we've been given. But that specific question was asked, what if my client puts it on social media? And NAR's position on that is that that is public marketing of the property and therefore would trigger the need for it to go onto the MLS.
Would that be a violation?
I'm sorry?
that be a violation?
The question was, is that a violation? If it doesn't go on in one day, then yeah, it would be a violation.
No.
Art at CRMLS.org would love to hear your concerns about that piece of it. I think
Right here.
somebody's got
Right
What,
here.
what about when you tell someone within your brokerage and they go tell someone from someone else's brokerage
Yeah, that's,
that they're friends with? How is that, it's gonna come back to us? Because, how can you police that?
At some point, we've gotta apply some common sense to this. And my guess is from a compliance standpoint and just in talking with my compliance people, that we're gonna have to look at it and say, is it something that you knowingly initiated in putting the property out for public consumption? And if you didn't knowingly commit that move, then we've gotta take it with a grain of salt.
Art.
I don't know.
No, you got right
Okay.
Are you going to put something out that we as agents can give to our sellers so that they know exactly, this is not our idea, this is yours? They know what's really going on?
Yes, I'm gonna put it with my picture at top. No, seriously, we will. I'm hoping NAR puts that together because every MLS in the country is gonna need that.
Okay, but, and this will not be effective until May 1st.
Till May 1st. We need to get a microphone to you so it can go on camera.
Hi there, I'm just wondering if you can explain the logic of having an office-only marketing opportunity for brokerages or firms. I mean, to me, it seems like it kind of goes against everything this is trying to uphold, and it's trying to make things exclusive. It's kind of exacerbating keeping things private. To me, it makes no sense at all, and if you have a brokerage like a Remax versus a boutique brokerage, it completely puts the seller at disadvantage.
Yeah, and in all honesty, that is the primary complaint about this policy is on the office exclusive side. And I would hope early on in the process, there's a meeting in May for NAR, that they answer to those concerns and those questions. Because it's being brought up at a national level. In the meeting that I was in yesterday with these MLSs, that was one of our primary topics is how this is handled. I don't know
Wait.
who's got a microphone next,
Right here.
but
Quick question. Working with new construction, and we work with the builders, we don't always get a listing agreement while we're building it. It's more towards the end of building. What if we're marketing, hey, we've got this property coming soon in North Redondo? Address?
so one of the things I said is that we're gonna have to answer to the new construction piece of it, because new construction is a different animal than residential resale. And that is one of the things that my attorney is working on some carve-outs for this. The question was asked earlier, and I don't think I answered it, was there any property type carve-outs? And at this point, there isn't, but we are discussing it internally. Recognize that this is a policy that is evolving before we get it passed by the board.
An address when you're marketing an area.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that most likely you're not gonna get anything kicked back from that, so. I know I've got a bunch of hands up, I don't know where the other microphone is, so.
Go person.
I do have a question about enforcement. Is this going to be where other agents simply go up against those that are, let's say the heavy hitters that use all these methods that it seems we're trying to stop? Who will be enforcing?
So we will be enforcing it based off of most likely reports that we're getting from agents. And recognize when you submit a complaint on a listing, it's done anonymously. And CRMLS is the complainant if it ever gets taken to a fine level or a review level. So you guys do this to each other on a consistent and regular basis. Across CRMLS, I get 6,000 reported violations from brokers and agents on a monthly basis. Yes, Steve.
Hello.
I've been running from food being thrown at me at these meetings, so.
So I list the property, and we're gonna be working on it for 10 days or something to work it. So I list the property, and the next day it's gotta be on the MLS. Or I only show it to the people in my office.
So you list a property. The
And I
next
put a
day-
waiver on it.
The next day, you put it, you register it with the MLS,
Okay.
you put a waiver on it, and then you don't have to do anything until marketing starts. But
Okay.
if you want to take a listing and start marketing the next day, then it's gotta come into the
But
MLS.
if I market it to my own company, I'm okay.
You're okay.
Okay.
But you still have to register it?
You still have to register.
Still have to register. Is it possible that I would list the property, put the sign up, and in the MLS I would say, marketing?
So
Say,
putting a sign up
no.
is marketing.
Property will not be shown for 10 days, nor will any offer be accepted.
Right-hand side,
Okay?
hold, do not show.
Okay.
You'll put that information in when you input the listing and tell us when the showings can occur, and that will be published in the MLS exactly.
And nobody can see it, even me.
No, everybody can see it at that point. It is fully searchable by everybody, and
But
the
they
way
can't go in the house.
they're, they can, well, if you don't have a lockbox on it, you know, or whatever entry mechanism you have, there will be a pretty stiff fine associated with people who show it when it's in hold, do not show.
Okay, thanks.
No, you cannot have an, like I said, you cannot show it yourself during that process. So the question was, you can't control people walk in. No, we can't. But that is not something that is facilitated by brokers and agents within the cooperative. That is something that is occurring outside of that. You know, that's just something that, that we're gonna be dealing with.
Art,
Yes?
have you done anything where we could see what these new listings would really look like when we see them from the board, May 1st?
As far as,
Well, what it looks like, I mean,
what it will look like is just literally appended on your property description, no showings until. That's the only change that you're gonna see.
So
when
it's not gonna
viewing those.
have, it's not gonna say new listing, I mean, you know, how is it going to be broken down? You know,
New
like-
listing.
Well, you know how we have new listings, we have, it's under contract, it's pending, it's sold, whatever.
So one of the things that we're doing with the change in the matrix system is that all searches against active will show active and hold do not show. It will not be a active thing that you have to go in and do to the system to make sure that those show up, okay?
So it's gonna be included in the active search.
It will be included in the active search, that was the question, so.
Cool.
It is an active status. Since days on market are being counted, you just don't want showings to occur on it. It is an active status. It does go out the door to IDX, it does go out the door via syndication in any direction that you guys have chosen to do that.
What if your seller truly doesn't want it on the MLS and they want it as a complete off-market? You're welcome.
Thank you. I was gonna bring that up, but probably at the end of the meeting so I could run away afterwards. They don't have that choice under this policy.
Well, they do if it's not listed with a realtor.
If it's not listed with somebody who's a part of the MLS, then they have that choice.
So that's working against it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, he has the mic.
I can't tell you that this part of the policy I don't agree with, and I think we're gonna have to answer to it sooner rather than later. Yes, sir.
So if we decide to go to withdrawn status, does that mean you have to pull the sign and stop all marketing?
No. No. Just as like within the hold status right now, if you put it in hold, you don't have to pull any of that either. But recognizing, recognize that, you know, most people who put it in the hold status are not getting the exposure that they do across the board, and those that are in withdrawn are not gonna get the exposure either.
Art, has NAR indicated that they,
She electromagnetic personalities. So I'll repeat the question, so.
All right, has NAR indicated that they are looking for input from MLSs around the country that are from actual users of the MLS as opposed to staff? Because you did say at the beginning that a lot of these recommendations are staff proposals.
Brokers.
So let me
So
clarify.
the policy itself came out of the broker and agent community. This is staff's implementation of policy that NAR passed that was put forward by brokerages and agents across the country.
So this morning is our opportunity to say to you and to CRMLS, both staff and board of directors, as well as the operations committees, that some of these things are not well constructed for real life, and the way that we, our clients, certainly in our market, have come to expect to be served within whatever, whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market in our area. So that's one of the things that I heard you say at the beginning. The other thing is when we get to the fine system, I do have some more questions, but I think it's really important for us to understand that we are able to give to you constructive criticism
Yes.
on whether or not this is going to work for our marketplace.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here to bring information back to our board of directors. I will tell you that I know what the sentiment in this room is, but sitting around the table at the rules committee level and through our board of directors, which our board of directors is very representative of a lot of variety of different business models and different brokerage sizes. There is support at those levels for this policy. Whether or not it's implemented exactly this way, there is support for it to make sure that we have a marketplace that you guys as realtors can depend upon, and a complete marketplace. Yes?
Hi, I have two questions. The
Okay.
first one is, if a broker, not an agent, is affiliated with more than one office, how does that play into this? So then, if they're affiliated with more than one office, are they then able to discuss the property because they're affiliated with more than one office?
I would go back to what brokerages is that listing affiliated with? Because one broker is gonna be responsible for that listing. It's not gonna be, well, unless there's a co-listing situation. If it's a co-listed situation, then the answer that I gave earlier is yes, it can be shared amongst all of those co-listing brokerages. But if it's a single agent, it's gonna reside underneath a broker, one broker, with the exception of the co-listed situation.
But I'm referring to a broker. If a broker is affiliated with more than one brokerage, a broker, somebody holds a brokerage license, a broker license, as opposed to an agent license. You can be affiliated with multiple offices.
I would defer back to the fact that the broker is the key term there, and that everybody underneath that brokerage, whether it's in different firms, they can communicate that listing to.
Wouldn't it be whatever you have the listing, you have the brokerage?
The second question?
Second question, we already have a property on a waiver, and then the new rules change. The new rules become effective.
Great.
What does that do to the current waiver?
It's a great question. And I will have answers for you before May 1st. As I told you, some of this stuff, this is educational for me as well. The group that came up with this policy is a subgroup of NAR called the MLS Emerging Issues Task Force. And next year, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to, I've been named to that committee. So you guys will have a direct voice to insert information into that committee. It's primarily made up of brokers, but there are MLS execs that are asked to participate as well. And next year I start a 3-year term with that group, and I know it's already on our agenda for our meetings in March.
What will your email
You
address
mean this
be
year?
then?
Art@crmls.org.
But it was still, your email will stay the same.
Depends on how abusive you guys are on me. I may ask, I'll tell Peggy, who's my assistant, she gets to now answer all the emails off of art at CRMLS.org. Or Kathy at
CRMLS.org.
That's the other
nice try,
Kathy.
nice try. I don't know where the microphone
I
is.
have one right here. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah?
Yes,
Okay. I believe you said that everything's status quo right now, but as of May 1st, the seller cannot opt to not go on the market at all. But so if that's correct, I don't understand what it says. It says none, it says no cooperation, listing, seller instruction not to market. Well, isn't that, we won't have that ability?
he's not understanding your question.
Okay,
You just get fined.
I believe you said that a seller cannot opt to not go on the MLS.
They can, but there can be no marketing outside of your office on that listing. Your
Okay.
office's clients.
Okay,
If
and
it gets
so-
marketed, then it's gotta go on the MLS.
Okay, but we can have a listing, would we, if they decided that they don't want it, we want it to, like, to go on to MLS for like comp purposes. But there's already a transaction involved, we would have a listing still, we would still register it.
You still register it, and for comp purposes, you can bring it on if it sells on the left-hand side.
So, anticipated on market, we can just put our close of escrow date or something in,
Correct.
okay, all right.
Yeah. The registration process, I don't know that there's gonna be a fine associated with any of the information provided. It's only gonna be associated with whether or not that marketing rule was violated. Okay? Who's got the microphone?
I do. Are there any time limitations on the statuses?
No.
How long it could be on hold, how long it could be withdrawn?
At this time, no. And that was a discussion at the Rules Committee, and they opted not to put any limitations on how long it could stay in each of the statuses. How long it could stay in the left-hand side, or any of the statuses on the right-hand side. Yes, sir.
So, two quick things. He asked a great question. If you have it, you put it as withdrawn, and you have a sign up, but you don't have to take the sign down. Isn't that a workaround? I mean, am I missing something?
At this point, I'm just mirroring what's going on in hold.
Right, I'm just making sure I
Yeah,
understand.
and so that's the process that we apply to that one.
Okay, and the second question, if a CRMLS member co-lists with a non-MLS member, you know where I'm going with this?
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
No.
Okay, so,
The rest of the people on camera need to know what your
oh,
question
yeah,
is.
sorry, okay, so a CRMLS member, which is probably almost everybody in this room, lists with, Joe Acme, right? Not, maybe not even local, not part of our MLS. We co-list with that person. That person is not bound by any of these rules. So they can hold open houses, do anything they want to do, which effectively markets, if it's me, my property. But do I get in trouble for that? Because I'm not doing it.
That is one of the things that's gonna have to be determined. If I lean back on what NAR has said about the seller, my guess is any public marketing of that, whether it's done by you or a co-listing agent, would require you to put it into the MLS. Okay? Yes, sir.
Going into buyer representation agreements with buyers, can a buyer basically say, look, you know what, I'm not signing anything, I'm gonna use multiple agents, but you can say, okay, look, I'll give you exclusives if you just sign buyer representation for only office exclusives. So essentially, you're saying, look, go ahead, look on the internet, do whatever you want, but if I have something that's coming up within my office, you have to sign this
One of the
agreement.
clarifications that's gonna have to occur in this is that buyers can sign multiple buyer representation agreements. That is part of this. And so there can be non-exclusives on the buyer representation.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I'm telling you about what,
I just want to make sure that I understand this. For clarification purposes, when I take a listing, I must do something within 24 hours, either put it on hold or withdrawn status or register it, correct?
something must be done within 24 hours.
Just for clarification,
Correct.
thank you.
got a microphone there.
When it comes to marketing, has anyone defined, like, is it anything, if I don't give an address, a photo, just a broad description, like bed, bath, square footage, what would you get there?
This is the new rule. And this is what we're going to be defining as marketing in that new rule. Includes but not limited to any information about the property or its availability for sale displayed on any signs, websites, social media, brokerage or franchise-operated websites, communications, verbal or written, multi-brokerage or franchise listing networks, flyers, or written material, or on any applications available to the public or by conducting an open house. This is what the rule is being taken to the board of directors for their approval. This is the implementation of 8.0 within our rule set.
Art, could you stand to the left so we could get that, please?
Thank you.
You don't want my pretty face in there?
Well, just your face.
Thanks.
We already had that.
What I will do is I can give this, this presentation to Nikki and let her post it wherever you guys post this stuff.
Perfect. Thanks, Art.
Yes, ma'am.
Just back to the buyer representation agreements, excuse me. Who's policing that?
Who's policing
Are
it?
we to turn in our buyer representation agreements?
No,
To register
we're
our
not gonna,
buyers?
we're not going to be asking for those. You guys are gonna be, you're gonna have situations where somebody sent an email out to 15,000 people, you have a client, and that client is gonna come to you and say, I got this listing from XYZ company, why didn't you show me this listing? And you're gonna say it's not in a multiple listing service. We'll get those reports. They will come in.
What if it's 100 and you just got one guy that you forgot to put in there? And that guy goes up.
It's not gonna be a perfect process. It will not be a perfect process.
So basically, you are,
Wait for the microphone.
your intent is to eliminate email marketing.
No.
No. I'm talking about within the, right, but to Deanna's point,
Only if it's an
there's
office
a mass email
exclusive.
marketing.
Yeah, and recognize, we're not telling you guys you have to enter into buyer representation agreements with every one of your buyers. But if you're gonna market office exclusives, you have to have buyer representation agreements with them. And no, the intent is not to end email marketing.
What was the original intent of the office exclusive carve out? Understanding that it may change and it's not perfect. What was the intent? What was the conversation?
The intent was feedback from some of the major franchise groups that they wanted to have an opportunity to market prior to it actually going on to the homes. I'm telling you, that's where it came from. Because I told you, if there's complaints about this policy, it comes around the office exclusive side of it. And that's, the buyer's representation agreement is not in the policy. That is CRMLS looking to find a way to limit the ability for people to just do wholesale marketing against a property to who they call their clients. Yes, sir.
So going back to the withdrawn, is that essentially the new hold do not show? And if you do show, that's a violation?
So it's the new hold. And, you know, these are some of the things that the Rules Committee is going to be meeting on this again in February before going to final status. And they're going to have to deal with the fining situation because that has not been set. And they're going to have to deal with issues like this about policy changes in regards to all of these statuses. So I'm probably speaking out of turn to alert at a certain extent about the withdrawn because there's still some things that have to be determined about that. There will be full FAQs about all of this stuff. And you'll all read that, right? We have a term internally called RDR, right, Kathy? Right. Realtors don't read. Please try to read through this one. There will not be pictures or anything from that standpoint, but we'll make it as interesting as possible.
Can I just get clarification on, you said if you are a member of NAR, the seller cannot sell a property off market. It has to go on the MLS.
If you're a member of the multiple listing service,
It has to go on the MLS.
it have to go on
So what happens if you do your office marketing, you open it up to your office, you input it, you get the waiver, and then you find a buyer?
You go through escrow and you close it.
So you don't have to then somehow be on the MLS?
No, that is something that the board and the rules committee is gonna have to get its arms around, because we want those in for comps. And so there may be some additional information coming down to make sure that what occurs on the left-hand side of this circle gets represented, when properties get sold, out in the marketplace.
You may have already answered this question. I'm curious about multifamily, and you get, you're making your phone calls and you have a seller that says, bring me an offer. How does that work? Can you give it some light on it?
I don't know that I have an answer for you on that one, because that's one of those exclusions that the board of directors is gonna have to get its arms around. I was out in Riverside this morning speaking about the same policy. They have completely different concerns than you guys. Theirs was more circled around, well, what about land? What about, multifamily? I mean, that's, there's just different concerns when it comes to different property types that's not on the residential side.
I have
Yes.
a question. Earlier you just said when that man was speaking that, the
That
reason,
man?
this man right here.
Oh, okay.
You said the reason why the brokers implemented this policy was because they can't market a listing that they have, but they can already market listings. What do you mean by?
I don't believe that's what I said.
You made it seem like the reason why they came up with this policy was because the system we have now isn't working, and you want a system that we can trust, so that's why you're implementing this new policy.
So
But
what's occurring out in the marketplace is across the country, there's expanding percentages of properties that are not being exposed on the MLS. And that's not, the MLS is coming back and saying this is wrong. That's brokers and agents in the local marketplaces saying, if it's truly being done for the consumer's benefit and the consumer wants it, there needs to be some carve-outs for it. But if it's being done specifically for the brokerage or the agent's own personal benefit, there needs to be some rules placed around that.
But it's done more for the seller, like it's not, how do they know, how is it that someone else is going to tell us how to market our client's listing if our sellers, I don't know, I guess.
I will fall on the sword on this, because I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've sold a lot of homes and been involved in this whole entire process. Nobody can make a valid argument to me outside of the fact that there's privacy concerns, that exposing a house to a lesser amount of represented buyers is in the best interest of that seller. I just, there's not an argument you can make to me that less exposure is better than more exposure. I'm gonna hold to the microphone rules, so.
Hold on, right here, right here.
Do I have a microphone out?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, okay, so, I belong to a book club, and, I've been, hypothetical question. I've been, talking with people in the book club, they all know I'm an agent. Somebody says to me, it's January, somebody says, well, I'm thinking about listing my house in October. Hold do not show for all this time, or I can.
Are you entering into a listing agreement that is post-dated to October?
No, she said this to me, and she said, and I would like you to sell my house. Okay, but we haven't entered an agreement, it's just a verbal conversation, we have them all the time. Okay, so how do I then secure that business that I've developed over the course of however long I've been in this group? To make sure that once she says, oh, I'm gonna, to somebody else, I'm gonna sell my house in October, somebody else doesn't then say, oh, well, maybe you should work with my agent, because they're a discount brokerage and they're only gonna charge you 1%. So how do I secure that business for that length of time?
Part of that is a question for your broker, but a lot of it, I don't think this policy really has a whole lot to do with that. That's just whether or not you're gonna get them to enter into some sort of agreement with you to protect your rights on it prior to prior to that October date. So,
I have a
yeah,
question.
she could take, in that situation, you could take the listing, register it, and just say that it's not gonna go, it's not going on market until October, and put that date there.
And then it shows up.
It doesn't show up anywhere.
Oh, you're just registering.
On everything on the left, remember, everything on the left does not show up anywhere. It's an office exclusive.
So another question, if you take a listing and then you put it in the MLS on hold, I know that sometimes for a lot of sellers, days on market are important. So does it start counting even though it's not publicly marketed to Zillow, Redfin?
If it goes into the MLS,
Yeah.
on the right-hand side, days on market count,
Start counting.
okay?
You withdraw.
Not in withdrawn. And there will be, you know, to answer that, there will be FAQs that go over what's happening with hold, what's happening with drawn, and what is eligible to go in all of those things.
Art, would you confirm this? Did you just say, right here, did you just say that if you have a listing, but it's only with your brokerage, and you sell it, one of your other fellow agents sells it, whatever, it doesn't have to record any, I mean, it can go on just as it's finally closed, but it doesn't have to go on the MLS per se?
So one of the things that the board of directors and our rules committee and our operations committee is discussing at this point is comp-only listings. And how those go into the system and what requirements, if any, are being placed on those.
But Art, if that's the case, if it's only in like RE/MAX with my company, then what are other agents from other companies gonna say, like, you know, we've been cheated, we never knew about this. So I mean, is there gonna be some issue with that where the people are saying, we're not getting, you know, we're not cooperating, we're not gonna get the same exposure?
We get those calls anyways because of properties being placed on waiver. And what the MLS responds and what the association responds is that property was on waiver. It is on file. As to where the seller's instruction at this point, we're not requiring that to be on file. But that's our answer, that there was an agreement in between the listing brokerage and the seller. It's sold within that waiver period, and that brokerage had the right to do that. And the seller was instructed on the risks of not exposing it to the MLS as a whole.
Just seems like you're gonna have a bunch of very unhappy agents.
I was gonna glibly say whatever. What's new, but you guys recognize that I tell my staff this all the time. Even if we have an A grade with our agents, 95%, that means that there's 5,000 to 6,000 people out there that hate your guts. So we try to do what we possibly can for the cooperative and what's best for the brokerage community. Truly we do. I know you guys are looking at me like I've got three eyes, but this is truly things that have been talked about and vetted for 1.5 to 2 years. So internally, you know, we're trying to do the best we possibly can to make sure that this is a fair playing field between all brokerages.
Right here.
On the left side, it's basically a pocket listing. As long as I don't market it to anyone, it can show up within my office. I can market it within my office and private clients. Is that correct?
Correct.
Once I market it, it becomes basically just MLS, what is current now.
Correct.
It's a hold or it's a withdrawal. So the left side. So what happens if you know, these online companies somehow get my listing because they don't follow the rules? Do they get penalized or anything? I mean, they are
So
also
the
part of
only
the
way that they could get that
CRMLS.
listing is through your brokerage. Because CRMLS is not publishing that list, CRMLS is not sending it out anywhere. It is internally a database that we're just making sure that we have an understanding of what listing contracts are out there. Because if we receive a report that there's public marketing going on,
Right.
we refer back to that, whether or not a waiver was placed on that, and that is what we're going to do with it. So if it shows up and gets publicly marketed, it's because somebody internally, either yourself or somebody at your firm, sent it out to people.
Second question is, these online marketing companies, they always have, they advertise listings that they don't even have or are not on the market. Will they get penalized for that stuff? Because we have to, we can't advertise any houses that we don't have an agreement with.
So if they're a member of the MLS, then yes, they will adhere to these rules. Yes.
So just to clarify, this only affects subscribers to the MLS. So a sales agent who is not part of the South Bay Association of Realtors, is not a part of the MLS, does not comply with these rules, correct?
Correct. I don't
So
have
what is
them
preventing-
under agreement.
Right, so what is preventing IC managers from Vista Sotheby's, from Keller Williams, from Remax here? What is preventing them from withdrawing from the MLS completely so that they can have their own platform, which many of them do, and corrupt the system of the MLS altogether for the smaller brokerages?
I've seen the market share across the board in all of my micro markets. Why would an organization want to put themselves in a position of not having the full marketplace?
Because Facebook has a marketplace and so does Instagram, and they're far further reaching than the CRMLS.
I would disagree with you.
I would not. The CRMLS only offers California listings. Zillow, for example, or Facebook offers international listings.
And your buyers here locally are mostly concerned with local listings.
My
So-
buyers are mostly going to be on Facebook and Instagram, not on the MLS IDX feeds from a local realtor.
I can only answer you that I think that there's a viable reason for the multiple listing service, and I don't think that there is a market share. We may have a short-term issue where people pop out, but I don't think it will be a long-term issue. And I think that a year from now, 2 years from now, you guys will be used to this process. And the fact that there was so much controversy about it going in, will probably, once we've worked out some of these issues, especially when it comes to office exclusives and seller choice, that it will be a non-issue in 2 years.
Question, in terms of
Yes,
looking.
please help me, because I just hear this disconnected voice, and, no, I'm asking the microphone runners to let me know.
A scenario, a typical scenario where there's a sale with two brokers from different firms, and it gets logged in the MLS, at the end of the transaction when it closes. That would be a violation now in virtually every scenario, right?
No, if you're completely on the left-hand side, and one of your clients decides to go outside, and you have a buyer representation agreement, and you agree to allow them to have another brokerage represent them through the agreement, that could occur. So there are some things that could occur on those
So one
sides.
agent from Sotheby's, one from Douglas Elliman do a deal.
It could occur.
How could the agent on the buyer side have discovered the property sort of lawfully under the rules?
To the seller.
What would be the scenario?
Through.
I thought that the agent, the broker's gonna be penalized if the seller's publicly marketing it.
So it wouldn't be public marketing if it's an office exclusive, and that client may have relationships with more than one agent. And if you agree as the listing agent to allow them to have somebody else represent them, they come to you and say, I don't really feel comfortable that you're representing the seller and me, I would like to get outside representation. It's occurred. And
So that would be the one scenario.
that would be the one scenario that I
The
can
only
think of.
scenario.
I can't tell you that it would be the only one.
Instead of double ending it,
You
they
guys
would
are
actually
asking,
hand off.
you guys are asking me to think on my feet, but that's the one that I can think of right now.
I mean, I think, the reason I asked that, I posed the question is because I think that one of the issues that you're trying to guard against is, off-market pocket listing deals, which happen all the time in South Bay. So this is the specific thing I think you're guarding against that and lots of sort of coming soon activity.
Yeah.
So I assume then when you see the transaction close with two agents from different firms, that you will then do some sort of an excavation of that transaction every single time, right?
Correct.
Requesting essentially all of the documents, email correspondence, like to what extent are you gonna go?
Exactly.
We're not gonna go to that level, but there probably will be some investigation into both parties to see how it was put together. I'm not telling you guys this is gonna be easy from a compliance standpoint, we have recognized that. Yes?
So I'm on the left side of the list. I've registered my listing, I've sent it out to my client list that have signed buyer reps. Now one of my clients come back and say, I'm not interested in this property, but I have a friend or family member who is. I can exempt myself from putting on MLS as long as before I show it to their friend or family, I get them to sign a buyer rep.
Yes.
Yeah,
We'll give it 10 more minutes, guys. And then you have my email address, so.
Getting back to the subject to MLS violations, there's been a couple, basically, where things can leak out, so on and so forth. Are you looking, you mentioned you have 6,000 violations reported on average a month. Obviously, you're not putting out 6,000 fines as far as.
Recognize 5% of those ever get to a finable situation for a membership.
So would that be consistent moving forward, looking for things that are more causal related as opposed to, okay, it got through, because obviously if you say something within an office, it can leak out in many different ways.
Yeah,
Can't people quiet down by people
we're not looking, CRMLS does not derive a ton of revenue from fines. It's very, very insignificant. In fact, we prefer not to fine people. And we're gonna go through this situation. As I told you, there's gonna be a 3 to 4 month time frame. We're gonna do more of an education on it. And in the situation that you just described, if, you know, or you described, if it got leaked out from one of your clients that you're adhering to the rules and it gets leaked out, you're not gonna get a fine from us because of something that's out of your control. I think, even though I told you that if your seller publishes it on Facebook, I think we're gonna have to revisit that issue. And NAR knows that that's not something that we think is gonna be amenable out there, because as an agent, we want you guys to control what you can control. And what you can't control, I don't think that we're, as an organization, going to fine you, or you're gonna hear from us if it's something that truly is out of your control. Yes, sir.
Yeah, since you said this was a broker-initiated change, essentially, correct? Is there any chatter you're hearing among the brokers on not to syndicate listings anymore to Zillow and these online platforms? Or have they become too big of a monster to deal with? Because this is the root cause of the issue. The reason off-markets and coming soon became what they became is because of brokers' response to Zillow. So is there any chatter that you heard, or is this just a dead issue?
I don't think it's a dead issue, but recognize that CRMLS is in a very tough position because I run a broker cooperative. I cannot espouse a position that the brokerages move in a specific direction against what's now become a competitor of yours. So that is a very tough position. Am I hearing that all the time?
Because if Zillow didn't exist, then new listings go on the market at the same time. We control the information. There's none of this, we're not fighting anymore amongst ourselves, there's no complaints. All of this goes away. So the root cause of the issue, the elephant in the room, is that we syndicated, we gave our listings to a third-party company that their property on.
Let me clarify. You gave your listing
That's what I'm saying.
to a third party. CRMLS did not do it.
We did, I'm saying we did.
Yeah, I just, because I get
The brokers
accused of
did.
that, I get accused of that all the time. I've even had people tell me, Art, you're probably personally, you know, benefited by this whole, which is, yeah, absolutely not true. Let me say that again. But you guys have full control over where your listings go. Even now at Realtor.com, Homes, all of the major portals, you fully control where your listings go. CRMLS does not do that for you. That's the problem. And the comment is that the public wants it on all of those websites. There's not really a whole lot that I can say about that.
My question is,
Just really
Wait
quick.
for the mic.
Oh, sorry about that. Just yell at me.
All right, got a couple questions.
Okay.
So, first one is about the no showings until.
So we know how getting a property prepared for the market can be a fluid thing. So is there some mechanism? So I say, I want it to go on the market, or no showings until a month. But it turns out it's ready in a week and a half. So is there some mechanism?
Just like you would change a status, you take it from hold do not show into active.
So nobody's gonna send a screenshot to the MLS and say, this says no one could see it for a month, and then you had an open house, sold it faster than that. That's not gonna happen.
If it's in hold do not show, probably. So the status would be incorrect at that point. If you're gonna do an open house, take it out of hold do not show and put it into active.
Okay, so just do the status change.
Do the
before
status
doing
change.
anything. Okay, next question, because we've been talking a lot about what's gonna happen in May. What are we doing now? What is the status we're supposed to do now? Because you can't register on the web. So can we send it straight to withdrawn?
The waiver process and the statuses will be in place until May 1st. Question was asked to me, what happens with stuff that's on waiver as of May 1st? I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Which waiver do you want people to use now?
Whichever one you feel comfortable with. If you want days on market not to be counted, in situations where you're not marketing it, use the CRMLS waiver form. If it doesn't matter to you, use the SELM, which is the CAR form. It's included as part of the forms.
So the CRMLS exemption.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, nothing changes until May 1st. This is all post May 1st that we're talking about. I think we got, yes.
So if you take the listing, but the seller is not ready in 2 weeks, do you post-date the listing, do I still need to register with the exclusion form? Because I'm not marketing it at all, I'm not putting a sign, I'm not doing anything. I'm just giving time to the seller to unclutter the house, paint it, and then, it's post-dated. But I do the listing, like securing the business, like you said.
So I'll step out on the limb and say no, because the listing doesn't exist at that point. But you do recognize that the seller in those 2 weeks could find somebody else, and if they could sell it inside those 2 weeks, they're not obligated to sell you, to pay you, as long as you understand that piece of it.
Right, they can sell it, and I'm not entitled to commission because I pretty much didn't do anything.
So my recommendation to you is get the listing contract as of today, register it, cover yourself. Don't post date it, put it into the registration process. They can do the same things that they would do in that 2-week time frame that you're giving them, but get yourself covered with a listing contract. Kathy?
Could I have clarification as I'm getting some questions back here? Earlier you said proposed, but this 8.0 is not proposed, it's a done deal.
That's one of the things that I started off with. The 8.0 that I started off with, the first screen, let's see if I can get back there. That is not proposed, that is passed.
Yeah.
And by May 1st, I have to implement this into our system. Okay? Maybe one or two more questions. Do we have?
Thanks, guys.
So, yeah, the question was, can I talk about fines? No, I can't, because the Rules Committee has not given us their recommendation for what the fines would be for all of these things, so.
I'm going to shock you. I have never had an off-market listing. I've owned 2 Century 21 offices, one Colonel Warden went in Century 21 office at the time. And I was 110th agent in the country. The Century 21 out of 90,000 agents. What I have seen since CRMLS, and that's just not referring to your MLS business, since all these rules came in, the off-market listings have gotten worse. I don't remember seeing these in the 80s. I think it's over-regulated. You can't regulate honesty. And I think we need to simplify the process so everybody can follow it and everybody not worry about fines. It's obvious, I'm older. I've been in this market a long time. I didn't choose to get into the real estate market, and I wouldn't do it again. I was the first independent computer consultant in LA. I got in this business because my husband bought a second office and got in trouble. And I I see every year it getting harder and harder for agents and less respect for the seller. I think it's time we simplify the process for all. I'm not just yelling at you. I'm standing up for the seller who we get paid by. And this has become very difficult for agents. We have gone from, before my time, a third of a sheet of the paper from a listing contract. Now, how many pages do we fill when we go out? I think your computer input form is at least 12 pages. I'm sitting around trying to figure out how I can mark this out because my clients don't want to spend 3 hours doing a listing. My only comment, and I'm sure you're shocked that I'm being nice to you, to simplify.
I knew you had it in you. I knew you had it in you. So let me answer to some of that. You know, the whole honesty question. I'll tell you the reason why the listing agreement is as long as it is because there has been so much litigation. There's so many things that have occurred from a legislative standpoint. It has nothing to do with the multiple listing service. And the problem that we face in this industry is, I'll tell you something. You know, I was asked to testify in front of the Department of Justice 2 years ago. And during that testifying process, it was very interesting in dealing with attorneys from the FTC and the Department of Justice, how badly they view this industry and how much they want to regulate what you guys are doing. And there has been, and it's not about money. They are answering to consumer complaints about the real estate industry as a whole. And the MLS is a mechanism by which you guys can regulate yourselves, okay? If you don't take that opportunity to regulate yourselves, somebody's gonna do it for you, okay? The Department of Justice sent out a CID to MLSs across the country because they had some harebrained idea that there was commission steering going on. You guys were searching in the system and lower commissions you were not showing to your clients. So you said of course not, very facetiously. It doesn't occur because the consumer has access to information and being able to search information, and if you don't show something to them, you're gonna answer to that. The other piece of it is statistically it's not proven by the searches in the system. We can go back and take a look at what you guys are searching at.
Yes, you can.
That's my point, is the reason why there's rules is because there's dishonesty. And this is not CRMLS coming up with this stuff. This is brokers and agents attempting to deal with dishonesty that they're seeing in the system.
I think it's
Okay.
micromanaging, I'm sorry, but.
I get it.
do apologize,
I get it. You know, one of the wonderful things about you guys as real estate agents is it's the largest community of type A individuals in California. And the idea of somebody regulating you is very difficult for you guys to handle. But at some point, I think we just need to answer to that concern that if you don't do it to yourselves, somebody's gonna do it for you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So essentially with these new rules, you're sort of eliminating networking groups where an agent...
Eliminating which groups?
Networking groups amongst agents and other brokers to kind of get information upcoming or facilitate off-market deals.
Absolutely not. If it would be marketing because it's agents across multiple brokerages, it's just the MLS has got to be, you have to put the listing into the MLS. You can still keep all of those activities going with these marketing groups, but it's just the next day you've got to input it into the MLS.
And then for everything that is active withdrawn, no one can see that unless you're the agent that actually submitted that listing.
No, everybody can see that. Everybody can see it in the system.
So it's not marketed across all the other platforms.
If it's active, yeah, it is. Withdrawn is taken down off of all the other platforms. Naturally, because it's a non-active status. Only active statuses go out the door to these other platforms, IDX, syndication and such. One more question, and I'm gonna give it to Steve because I like Steve, so he doesn't throw me under the bus.
I'm just not gonna ask a question. I'm just gonna say, you are one of the largest MLS in the country, is that not correct?
In the world.
In the world.
I'm,
Secondly-
you guys don't think that as being arrogant, I'm just
I'm just telling you that this man runs the largest MLS in the world. And every year, there's about 700 NAR directors that are realtors. And they choose out of that, maybe 3 or 4 other people that aren't realtors that run companies to help us do our business, and they chose ours. So he is like he's like out of 3 or 4 people in the whole country on the NAR directorship. So congratulations.
Thank you. With that, Art at CRMLS.org or Kathy at